Good morning, good evening. Back here with another screencast to share some of my research and insights here. And I'm just going to start this off with just giving the usual disclaimer that I'm not any kind of financial advisor or expert or anything. I am a diligent researcher and, trained editor, writer, thought leader, if you will. So take that for what it is. Do your own research if you're planning on investing in anything that I'm talking about here. But the way I learn better is and internalize some of these facts that I'm researching is to share them and try to articulate them. So that's the whole objective of these types of videos. Anyway, as you can see, we'll get going right here on the screen. We've got a nice little handy presentation about the topic of today's screencast. I'm going to start with a macro view, kind of just to give an overview of some of these insights that I'm finding about timely topics. In this case, we're talking about precious metals, copper specifically. And then I will kind of zone in with some more specific angles that I'm specifically monitoring in the markets and share with you here. So this cool little presentation is infographic by visualcapitalist.com. It's pretty cool. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but you can see that overall a lot of people are talking about record prices. You hear a lot about gold being at a record high, silver being at a record high, and I took one angle on silver specifically yesterday, and you could watch that video if you haven't already. And now we're going to talk about what a lot of people are saying is the next big one, which is also experiencing all-time record highs in global prices, at least compared to the US dollar at present. And of course, copper is one of the most sought after materials in terms of fueling the industrial revolution because it is a conductor of electricity, to say the least. But let's go through some of this presentation. You can see what industries depend on it. Of course, all these things here, like specifically EVs, smartphones, and I would just add to this in general electricity. A lot of the electric lines depend on copper in one form or another, and of course there's much more that you can get down into. And so this infograph shows where a lot of the copper is in the world right now. The key point here is a lot of the deposits here are found over here. Of course, these are the raw deposits. This is where it's mined. But you can't just take the ores that you mine from the ground and have usable copper. It needs to be processed. Smelters here, and where it comes from the mines, a lot of them in Chile and South America, and it's shipped to smelters in China and North America and Canada and also in Europe, as you can see here. And just a list of the countries of some of the countries who are exporting and importing refined copper. Obviously the biggest exporter of this refined copper is Chile and Russia, the biggest two, and then the largest importers, no surprise, are China and the United States here. And this is the raw ores. Like I said, China also produces a lot of their own copper and processes their own copper. They import it, from countries like, as you can see here, the ores come from Chile, Peru, and Australia, as well as Canada and the U.S. as the top. But you don't see China up there. You see China as the importer of the ores that they process themselves, and they also import refined copper too, along with the U.S. So interesting little insights here about that. And the other take-home message I see from this infographic is in these next few slides basically is showing the availability of quality copper is on a downtrend. Basically, the grades are falling. There's a lot of risk and adverse factors to consider here, like where a lot of this copper comes from along this tectonic plate region here. So I'm not going to get into the details of that, but like I said, I'll share the link here if you want to go into detail. And yeah, as you can see in this graph here, is you see that a lot of the copper that was in reserves and held, and also the discoveries, the RD that goes into that, it's not necessarily on the up. In contrary, it seems to be on the decline, at least in this time scale here. So those are some of the factors of why copper, among the other precious metals, is on an all-time high surge right now, which I'll get specifically into in terms of price very shortly, but I just wanted to share some of the insights of this infograph here. But yeah, I'll share that link so you guys can check that out on your own. But it's here if you want to find it on your own without clicking the link, visualcapitalist.com/sp/coppers-supply-chain. So I'll share that link for you here. I'm just going to close it to free up some memory here. And we're going to get into the next slide of my little site. So talking about price here, and I'm using TradingView, as you can see here. So yeah, this is the price of copper at present right now. It was at an all-time high earlier in January at just above $6, $6 per pound. And so yeah, now we're back to 5.9 here. You can see this is the last 10 years of copper. So if you these are copper futures. So if you had a contract back then and you secured the copper at the beginning of 2016 here, and you got it for $1.90, it would be at least, about 3 times that value today. Okay, obviously there's ebbs and flows of market. It doesn't just go like that. But just to show you in the last 10 years already, you're looking at significant growth just on the base of copper futures, right? Okay, the next thing I wanted to show you here, for the sake of this presentation, is mining. Obviously, a big part of that is mining, and mining's always a complicated one because obviously it costs money to mine, and so the profitability is not the same as having refined product, fully developed, value-added product already that's ready to be utilized in industry. So it's not necessarily the same length. But that said, once you go into the actual copper mining market, which is, you can see on this frame here, this is Global X Miners, an ETF that tracks copper miners. You can see it has been very profitable compared to just even the price of copper in the last 10-year period right here. So yeah, we're talking about this ETF, just using this ETF alone, was valued at about $10 10 years ago, right? And now it has gone up ninefold with the latest highs. And we're at the current peak right here. And what I want to show you here is I want to actually focus in on a mining company that I found in my research here that is North America based, and even in this last week when I started kind of doing some basic trades and acquisitions in the markets, has already earned me upwards of 25% at the moment. Of course, like I said, this is a very volatile market that can go up and down, so I'm not trying to brag or boast or anything, but it did catch my attention, and this is the whole reason I started looking into this in general. And so that company is Trilogy Metals, TMQ. So this company, we can just see the price action once it loads, is actually a Canadian company. It's based, its headquarters is in British Columbia, BC, but it is one company that made the headlines because it was a company that even the U.S. government and its strategic direction with precious metals, especially ones that are important for national security, including silver, gold, and copper being one of them, has a vested interest in. And not only the U.S. government, but also Australia. So this company has some joint venture with an Australian company, South 32, and it is actively exploring and developing copper deposits in a strategic part of Alaska. So there's the U.S. angle that I had overheard when researching and looking into it. And so, as you can see, there's some wild price action going on here, like specifically really recently, last October, you see this huge spike here. But even in the past, leading up into 2019, 2020, it was reached some relative highs there before dropping down here. And yeah, so let me just kind of compare this before we go on into specifics here. I'm going to show what this particular company looks like against the the copper miners ETF that I mentioned earlier. So I'm going to add that. It's right over here. COPX is the ticker. And you guys can see exactly, you guys and girls can see just for comparative purposes. So I guess the key numbers here in the last 10 years, I believe we're in the 10-year, around 10 years here. Just the copper miners ETF has grown 800%, right? So it went from like whatever $10 to 90 something dollars, right? Comparatively now, just the current price levels, not the all-time high peak surge that happened in October, is already up 2,448% for this company, this Canadian exploratory company that is involved in some very strategic projects that is part of the reasons for its surge in price here. So let's kind of zoom in a little bit here to the more present time. You can kind of see more closely. So let's go, we're talking since, say, 2020 here. You can see for the most part, the overall miners ETF was pretty much outperforming what TMQ was doing, and a lot of it, if even looking into 2024, 25, like I said, it's a difficult, complex thing when you're just an exploring company and you're a mining company. Profits aren't as straightforward because you have a lot of costs, obviously. So it's all relevant to the cost of copper and the price you can get in the market. And that said, something here started changing. 2024, 2025, money starts flowing into this company and the overall industry in general. So if we kind of zoom into this particular period where it really shines here, where it jumped up, and we're talking October 2025. So what happened with this company? Well, what happened is, we mentioned earlier, the stake of the U.S. government, right? So this is a press release from the company itself. Obviously, there's CNBC and CNN. You can find other articles about this, but this is directly from the company. I'm not going to read it directly, but basically, the Department of War in the U.S. in quarter 4 in 2025 here has strategically invested in this company, this Canadian/Australian joint venture here, and it all relates to the development of this strategic mining district in Alaska, right? So I won't get into the details because you can read it yourself. I'll share some of these links here for you to look into. But basically what we're talking about here in Alaska, if we zoom in here, the north part of Alaska there, it's this Upper Kobuk Mineral Project, and particularly Ambler State mining claim. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on up there, which is a very strategic zone for North America and clearly Australia as well, in light of everything else going on geopolitically around the world. Yeah. So that was what happened basically when, I'll let you read the news on your own, of how Trilogy Metals, why their price surged in October of last year. Of course, it was a big surge. A lot of people, when they saw this and they read this news, got stocks really cheap, right? It went from $2 and $2.20, so what we call penny stocks, right? And then overnight, literally, when the Department of War of the United States invested in this company, or at least came out with this investment and went public with it, it went up to, at its peak, $11. So you imagine owning stock right there, and then, of course, a lot of people took profit here. That said, once the dust settled, come here in November, December last year, the price didn't just go to the floor where it was still way higher than it was. It's still double of what it was, from $2 to $4, and on the rise, still on the rise, considering all things. So, yeah, that's the company that I've been looking into this last week that's made me a nice little 25% return. Of course, it's unrealized gains. I haven't taken profit. I'm just obviously studying the fundamentals and trying to convince myself whether it's a sustainable investment and trade to hold stock, and experiment with specific types of strategies when you own a certain amount of shares of a company, for example, covered calls. I'm also vested in right now. So yeah, interesting times here we live in overall. Again, I'll share these links with you so you can look into this company and see if it's something that you would want to get into as well, right? You can see all of these different facts on their website itself, and you can find a lot of other information here about all the projects mentioned. But yeah, I think we live in interesting times, and I'm happy to share my insights. Obviously, I'm not telling you that this stock's going to go to the moon or it's going to crash. Time will tell for sure, but there is a rhyme and reason behind everything that's going on in the market, and you've got the time to look into it. It is definitely rewarding, literally and figuratively. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and end my little monologue today, and I hope you gained something out of it. If anything, I've gained something out of it by being able to try to articulate the reasoning and the insights that I've come to by spending time looking at all of these particular factors. If there's anything I missed or any kind of insights that you'd like to share from your own research, do leave a comment or get in touch, and I'd love to hear from you. With that, take it easy, y'all.